This summer is all about watercolor flowers. There are two ways you can join in the fun. Number one, if you want the basic tutorial, you're here, yay. Follow along with the video, paint your flower with me, and subscribe so you don't miss the other flowers that are coming out every week this summer. Option two, join Painting Through the Seasons, my new course that's all about painting watercolor flowers, but you'll get extra instruction on how to sketch your flowers, how to mix your watercolors, watercolor techniques each week. It's going to be a lot of fun. So if you want that extra guidance, scan the QR code to join me today. Now let's paint some flowers. This week for our daisy, I'm going to do a really simple sketch because I am going to show you how to do masking fluid and a variegated wash. So we're just going to sketch one flower with some simple petals and a simple stem, and then we'll move on to the masking fluid and you'll see why I'm only doing one flower. So the daisies, they have a circular center and their flowers or their petals are pretty long and thin. And sometimes you can see in the reference photos that the petals are a little bit squared off. So I'm just trying to capture that bit of the petals. They're spaced out around the center. Sometimes they're touching and overlapping, and sometimes they aren't touching at all. So just make your way around the center with your petals and play around with overlapping or keeping them separate and see what you like best. I'm going to add in my stem and just a tiny little like baby leaf and some of those they're like little buds coming off the stems. I don't really know what you call those, but they're just little tiny things that stick out from the sides. And that will be done for our sketch. I'm going to show you how to use masking fluid on this layer. Masking fluid is a way to keep your paper white where you don't want the paint to go. So I am going to paint in my entire daisy with this masking fluid. And you want to make sure you're using an old brush. And once you're done putting the masking fluid on, you want to rinse and clean your brush right away, or it'll get all goopy and you won't be able to use it again. So I'm showing you this because the technique this week is a variegated wash. And so I am painting in our daisy so that we can do the background as a variegated wash. So with the masking fluid, you just paint it on. It doesn't have to be super thick, and it's just like painting anything else. Just color or paint in your sketch lines. The cool thing with masking fluid is once it dries, that's when we'll paint the background. And then once the background dries, we'll get to peel up the masking fluid and we'll have watercolor paper left over underneath. Such a neat medium to use. I don't use it super often. I should use it a little bit more because it is very cool to work with. So we'll let this dry and then we'll move on to our wash background. Okay, our masking fluid is dry. I'm going to use the large brush to make my paper wet, and then I'll use the smaller brush to add my color. So we're doing a variegated wash. So I am just going to cover my whole paper with water to get it started. And you can see how the water beads up on top of the masking fluid that's dry. That's how it's protecting our paper. I'm going to do a 2-color wash in the background. A blue, like a teal blue on the top and a green on the bottom. So all you do to make this wash is you start adding color on one end. Add as much as you want, make it as dark as you want near the top. And then you tilt your page so that the color starts to run down towards the middle. You can continue adding color to make it darker if that's what you're looking for. You can also dab in other colors if you want some blooms to happen and to have some different color variations in that side. Once you have that side done, you flip it and you begin to add your second shade on the end. Again, as much color as you want. Once you have the color on that side, you're going to tilt that up and have it move towards the middle. So the cool thing about this is your colors start to blend in the middle, and it makes a really soft, beautiful transition line between the two colors. I'm going to add in some extra dabs of color in the grassy area just to add some texture to this. You can put as many colors as you want in there. And this will give us some texture from the blooms that are going to happen because we're adding that paint on top of the wet paint. Once this all dries, then we will be able to pick off the masking fluid, and you'll see we have our flower left over that we can add some paint to get some definition in the petals and the stem. Our masking fluid or our background layer is dry, so I'm going to use a little eraser to start picking off the masking fluid. In tiny areas, it can be easier to use an eraser. In the bigger areas, it's easier to just peel it off. You can kind of see now how white the area is that's left behind in between that background that we made. So that's the power of masking fluid. You still have your watercolor paper to paint on once you get other colors on top. So you can see I can just kind of peel my way around these petals because it's such a large area. So you just mess around with it with your fingers. You can use the eraser to get all that gunk off. And then we still have our sketch left behind, and we are able to paint now on top of that. It's like a little silhouette there. So I'm gonna mix just a gray color, and to get a gray, I mixed, or I'm gonna do the center first. So that is a mix of yellow ochre and scarlet lake and cad yellow medium to get that golden yellow. And then I'm gonna make a mix of gray using the complementary colors Scarlet Lake and Perylene Green. And I want it to be pretty light, just to add in some definition into these petals. So if you look at pictures of daisies, you can see that the petals aren't bright white. Our brain wants us to think they're bright white, but they're not actually. If you look closely, you'll see different tones in those petals. And so the gray is just, I'm just using the gray to hint at that. I'm going to use also some perylene green for the stem because we do have that stem left over there in where the masking fluid was also. Now we can let this layer dry and see what we have. I'm not going to add too much on this layer. I really just wanted you to practice the variegated wash on this one, but I am going to add a little bit darker color to add some depth and definition to this flower. Nothing too fancy on this one, just practicing with adding some depth and highlights to all the places on our flower before we go to final details. I'm going to get that gray color again and add in a little bit more highlights and shadows into those petals. I'm adding in just like the look of the veining with this color. And then we will let it dry and go on to final details. Our daisy is dry, so we can add in final details with the Inktense pencils in the middle and on the stem. I love adding that texture in there. Then I am going to use just a regular pencil to add in some lines into the petals just to add extra suggestion of the veining in the petals. And then I have a fine liner pen I'm going to use to make tiny dots in the center to suggest the extra texture that daisies have. This is a super fine point one, so these are super tiny dots, but it gives that texture that I'm looking for without overwhelming the yellow color. Then we can move on to our splatter effect. I'm using yellow ochre, pulling that from the center color. And some perylene green. And there we go, we have a daisy. Remember, this is the basic tutorial for the week. This is what you will see every week through the summer unless you join me in painting through the seasons. This course was built to dive deeper into watercolor to help you learn how to sketch your flowers, how to mix your colors, different watercolor techniques every week. And I wanted to do that so that if you like a step-by-step approach and if you want more instruction instead of just painting along with me, then you can and you have that option. Right now, the course is discounted because I'm adding the flowers as we go. And so after summer's over, the price will jump up. So jump on that discounted price now, and I will see you in there.